I've built a business that lets me pretty much work wherever I want, whenever I want, and with whoever I want. And that's something that I'm extremely grateful for. And in this video, I want to talk about how I reached that freedom as a founder, because it wasn't always like this. I've been building a company for the past 3 years, and there definitely have been moments where I did not have this level of freedom. And so I want to talk through basically how it was going from having basically none of that freedom to then creating something that gets me that freedom. Over the past 3 years, I made a lot of mistakes. But one of the things that I did get right was eventually hiring a team. But initially I got that all messed up. So I just want to talk through the entire journey of that. I started a software agency. Initially, I essentially hired a bunch of contractors to try and do the work for me. I was immediately thinking about delegating, giving people work and trying to free up my time, buy back my time, that kind of thing. And I made loads of mistakes. So I didn't vet people properly. I had no idea how to vet people. I also didn't have enough budget to hire people properly. So I basically took all the money I had for my first project and started to hire contractors because I couldn't hire full-time employees. And even for those contractors, I had very small budgets. And so I had to make things work with a tiny budget. I basically hired really bad talent that didn't do things properly. And the result of that was that they did things really badly. I had to go in and fix them, but because they did things badly and then I had to fix them, they took longer than planned. So the client was unhappy, the projects were delayed, the quality wasn't as good as I wanted, and it was as a whole a disaster. And I really recommend you skip on that phase. The worst of it was I kept trying to hire contractors to fulfill on projects, and I kept trying to do that until one time I hired this agency that got me a couple contractors that were so bad they almost cost me a client that was massive. At the time, he was my biggest deal, and I put 2 contractors on the job which were terrible. They had no attention to detail, they didn't know what they were doing, they were essentially juniors, and I needed more senior people, and it was horrendous. The experience was really bad, and the client complained a lot. I gave him certain discounts on his retainer because I felt really bad, and I honestly was ashamed of the work that they had put out. That was a really close call, and that was also a bit of a wake-up call. And so eventually I got rid of those contractors and I just focused on fulfilling myself, and I worked way harder because I was now trying to do all the fulfillment. Now, I will say one of the problems that caused was I couldn't spend as much time on marketing and growth. I wasn't spending time on business growth, but I did get the client side right. And I spent time basically making my client experience really, really good. Only then did I start to hire out things to my team. The first hire I made through basically communities. I had a friend who was involved in a lot of developer communities, and I said, hey, I need somebody for this and this, and can you help me find people? And I did a bunch of interviews, and this time I had a proper interview process. I would do one first interview, which was like, it was a superficial check whether our values align, whether this is somebody I'd like to work with. And then the second interview was about technical challenge that I would give them. I also wanted to understand more about their motivation, their experience, and not so much how senior they are, but why they want to do this particular job and what kind of team they want to be in. They would be joining effectively a 1 or 2 man team, right? And so it's a very small company. Some people like that, some people don't. I want to make sure I find somebody who actually wants to be here. And once I found that person, I made another full-time hire that I made too quickly, but also he wasn't very good. He didn't have attention to detail, all kinds of mistakes, and so eventually I had to drop him as well. So you will always make certain blunders when hiring, but man, when I made that right hire, and then more recently I added another developer to our team, and then I added a designer as well for a little while, and for the first time I could really take my hands off of fulfillment, and I just do client communication and I handle the client expectations and things. But operationally, I run the entire project in less than 4 hours a week. That for me was a real breakthrough, and that started to give me the kind of freedom that I wanted. That was really, really powerful. A lot of founders struggle with this, where they find themselves kind of trapped under a massive workload trying to sustain their business, and the only way out of that is through hiring. And some founders will come and say, oh, well, I can't find good people, like I don't know how to hire. Ideally, you should be hiring people better than you, for starters. I help some people start their own agencies, and I've had some of them say, oh, I don't think I'm good enough to hire because I'm not senior enough. The whole point of hiring is you want to find somebody who's better than you, who can do more than you, who's specialized in just that one function, because you have to do other things. And so that's a non-starter, that's a non-argument. That's just not a problem, because the whole idea is that you want somebody who's better than just focus on that. The second common problem is like the opposite of that, which is I am very good at this and everybody I hire is terrible, and I can't find somebody who can do it as well as I can. That is a hiring problem still. You have to find that person. There is absolutely somebody on the planet who can do it better than you can. Unless you're telling me that you are the smartest person at that particular skill, in which, fine if you want to go that route, but chances are you're probably not. There's probably somebody better, and it is your job to find that person. And you have to fulfill yourself until you have the budget to hire that good person. But making good hires is a massive, massive like weight off your chest when you get them right. But they are harder to sustain, they are more expensive, absolutely, and you need more cash to be able to pay those kinds of salaries, yeah. But that is really what the game of business is ultimately about. It's bringing together the right group of people. That will take time, but when you do it, it's extraordinarily satisfying. What you're able to take from that, I think, is really amazing too. I want to add one last caveat though, which is if you want to have good people and then you want to keep them, you will also still have a job, which is going to be to grow the company. Unless you have somebody who grows the company for you, right? Unless you've been able to hire that out, in which case congratulations. But usually when you're relatively small, you need to drive that growth yourself. And if you don't drive that, people will eventually leave. If you have any good kind of talent, good talent wants progression. They want things to move forward and they want to see the team grow. They want to expand their abilities, their leadership, whatever. And so you need to drive the business forward in order to keep them interested in the company that you run. Otherwise, at some point in time, they're going to be like, okay, well, I've been here for a few years and nothing's changed and I kind of want something new. They'll get bored. That happens to them as well. They're human. It's important that you still hold up your end of the bargain, which is to bring them closer toward their goals. One of the best ways to retain good talent is to just help them build toward their goals, whatever they are. My first hire, his salary has almost doubled since he first started. And that's because we had many discussions about where he wanted to be, what kind of goals he has, and we moved toward those. And I also tried to give him somebody he could mentor, and I think that was part of what he enjoys as well. And so all of this kind of builds toward that. And I think that's extraordinarily important, is that you build toward your team's goal, their goals specifically, like one by one, what do they want? And how can you help them achieve those things? That's gonna keep them with your company for a really long time. And that will give you so much peace of mind when it comes to projects and execution. Like not having to think about fulfillment is really a massive burden off of your mind, I think. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate you watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to comment.